Discover the amazing moment a struggling dad encounters his first love. Now a millionaire CEO, Mark tightened his grip around the wrench, the greasy residue mingling with the warm sweat that dripped from his brow. The sun slipped behind the horizon, casting shadows across the dusty floor of his garage. He glanced at the photos of his kids taped to a bulletin board, the smiles frozen in time reminding him of home. What would they think of him now? With each clink of metal, uncertainty gnawed at his gut. The weight of the world pressed down as he struggled to drown his thoughts of grief and inadequacy. Just then, a familiar voice rang out like a bell. "Mark?" He turned, and time ceased. Standing there in tailored heels and a designer suit was Sarah, his high school sweetheart. The girl who had once sat beside him in math class had transformed into a poised CEO. The contrast stung, like a fresh cut. Could she see his rough hands worn from toil? Her eyes held a mix of confidence and curiosity, igniting a swell of memories he thought he had buried. All the dreams they had shared seemed to wink at him, their brightness dimmed by his reality. He opened his mouth to speak but found the words caught in his throat. As they navigated the small talk that danced around deeper truths, unease stirred within him. How could he reconcile the glorious tales of her corporate victories with his life of rust-covered engines and repair manuals? Pride wrestled with envy deep in his chest. She had built an empire, while he felt tethered to the familiar grind of daily survival. "I'm still in Harlow, working at my father's shop," he managed to say, forcing a smile. His voice wavered, an ember of vulnerability flickering within. "Mark, that's incredible. Hard work pays off." "You always had that in you," she replied, yet her enthusiasm flared up a mix of shame and longing in his heart. What had hard work ever brought him? A struggling mechanic scraping by, was that truly enough? The flickering doubt in him whispered, "Do you even belong in her world?" Memories of midnight study sessions and whispers of shared dreams fell away, leaving a chasm between their lives that felt insurmountable. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." With each moment, Mark couldn't shake the feeling of their conversation as a mirror. Her poised reflection illuminated all he felt he was not. Yet there was also a spark between them, igniting a long-forgotten hope. Would she remain impressed if she knew how much he struggled? The financial opportunity of a lifetime knocked on his door, an investor willing to back his dreams of expansion. But it blinked before him like a highway sign on a night drive, blinding in its brightness. To grow, he needed to let go, compromise the values that had been his guiding light. Mark's heart raced as he noticed Sarah's expression transform, a shadow crossing her face. She opened up about the pressures of her life, revealing the cracks in the polished exterior. "I've sacrificed a lot to get here, Mark," she admitted, and the pain behind her words struck like a hammer against metal. The room felt charged, her vulnerability igniting his inner turmoil. The essence of his identity, a devoted father, a hard worker, clashed violently with the allure of success that felt perpetually out of reach. What does it really mean to succeed? What if integrity came with a price? Mark felt the walls of his heart constrict. The dream of a better life for his kids loomed at the forefront, but at the same time, he feared what might be left behind. Their eyes locked, an undeniable connection lingering between them. Mark stood at a crossroads. Should he protect his values or chase a future that felt more like a betrayal? The air crackled with tension, and the question hung between them: was success worth losing himself? Shadows deepened around Mark as the true tug-of-war began, leaving him feverishly contemplating what path he would choose. The garage felt stiflingly small, transformed into a crucible of doubt and desire. Mark struggled with the realization that every moment spent in Sarah's presence churned up feelings he had thought long buried. He wiped the sweat from his brow, trying to regain composure, as the implications of their recent exchange weighed heavily on him. Could he dare to dream again amidst the confusion that tightened around his chest? Mark, we've both worked hard, but I've had to navigate through some difficult choices. Sarah's voice broke through to him, her brow furrowing as she continued. Sometimes it felt impossible. She gazed deeply into his eyes, as if trying to bridge the chasm between their worlds. You deserve more than just making ends meet, you know? Her words unfurled a sliver of hope, but also scabbed over a wound he had worked vigilantly to conceal, fear of failure haunting him since childhood. What if he could harness this moment into energy that surged him forward? The murmurs of ambition that once played loudly in his mind now battled against flakes of self-doubt clinging like rust to gears. He mirrored her earlier sentiment, considering his life thus far. But what does it take? I've worked every day, trying to provide for my kids. Is that not enough? His resistance was palpable, a wall he'd built brick by brick to guard against the world's pretense and the bitter sting of inadequacy. What if you could do more? She challenged softly. It's not just about hard work, it's about the opportunities. How many times have you let fear silence your dreams? Those words hung in the air like a weight he had never counted on carrying. He held on to them, allowing her question to circulate in his mind, mingling with memories of late nights determining which bills to prioritize and days spent fixing cars instead of pursuing paths he once believed he could conquer. The walls of his self-imposed limitations seemed both comforting and suffocating. Mark glanced outside, where the dark sky mirrored the heaviness in his spirit. It takes money to grow a business, Sarah. I need to think about my family first. There's too much at stake. He hesitated only for a moment, then continued. I just don't know if I can float in your world. I've been thinking, what if you allow yourself to take that leap? She paused, giving him a chance to process her words. An investor, you said? What's stopping you from pursuing that? It could lead to the success you dream of, but you have to be willing to step outside these walls. The idea gripped him, sending a surge of adrenaline through his veins, but fear coiled viciously around his throat. What if he took that leap only to fall flat on his face? On the shoulders of compromise? His heart raced at the prospect, only to drown in the bitter undertow of what-ifs. Success should be about more than financial wins. It's also prioritizing what we value, he responded, feeling more resolute now. My reputation, my integrity, they matter deeply. What if I change and lose sight of what truly matters? Sarah stepped closer, her eyes steady. You're thinking of it all wrong. It doesn't have to be about losing your identity. You've always embraced hard work. You've been successful in your own right, Mark. Maybe it's time to reimagine your success, not chase it through someone else's lens. Mark searched her face, contemplating the potential for a future colored with ambition. Her words opened a floodgate, prompting him to weigh the virtues of stability against the intoxicating call of opportunity. If he took action, he might reclaim more than a paycheck. But at what cost? As their exchange sank deeper into his thoughts, the pulsating realization of needing to confront his fears loomed larger. How far could he stretch without breaking? The stakes had never felt higher, but neither had the potential for growth. A battle raged within, forcing him to sift through aspirations and anxieties, laying bare his longing for a more vibrant future. Suddenly, the phone buzzed in his pocket, and Mark snapped back to reality. It was a call from the investor. His following step could shape everything. The decision hung before him like a cliff with uncertain depths. Are you going to answer it? Sarah probed gently. In that moment, Mark was faced with not only an urgent phone call but also the daunting question of his true self-worth. What would he risk to discover who he might yet become? He took a deep breath, realizing that soon he would have to lean into the unknown. He couldn't straddle both worlds any longer. The moment of truth was fast approaching. Was he ready to confront those fears head-on? The ringing intensified in his ears, drowned out only by the sudden clarity of what was at stake. With an uneasy resolve, he reached for the phone, ready to grasp fate tightly in his hands. The ringing ceased abruptly as Mark pressed the answer button. He could feel Sarah's eyes on him, an anchor amidst the chaos swelling in his mind. Hello? He managed, his voice steadier than he felt. Mark. It's Kevin. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time, the voice on the other end chirped. Kevin, the investor, was a force of casual confidence, a stark contrast to the battle Mark was waging internally. Mark collected himself, forcing focus. No, it's fine. I'm glad you called. What do you have for me? As Kevin explained potential terms and the level of investment they were discussing, Mark's mind whirled. Numbers flashed before his eyes like neon lights, each figure reminiscent of a door opening wide in hope but also closing tight with anxiety. This was real. This was a pivotal moment that could rewrite the script of his life. A significant capital injection could elevate your shop, maybe even expand to 2 locations, Kevin said, his enthusiasm palpable. You just need to show how committed you are, and I'm here to support that. Mark's imagination raced. Visions of a bustling garage with a flow of customers, the life he had always wanted. Yet, beneath that dream, the steady thrum of doubt persisted. What if I can't make it work? What if I fail? The questions nagged at him, chipping away at the excitement that rose in his chest. Every entrepreneur has those thoughts, Mark. It's part of the process, Kevin replied, his tone shifting to one of velvet reassurance. But it's about your path forward, not the fear that can hold you back. You have potential, and you must seize it. Potential. The word echoed in Mark's mind. What if he was meant for something greater? The drift of his life thus far had been steeped in necessity, sacrificing dreams for survival. But could he pivot now and rediscover what he had once envisioned for himself? I just need to think it through more, Mark said, though he felt the weight of regret for hesitating his chance again. Kevin's silence on the line told him all he needed to know. The investor knew hesitation could be a trap. Mark, you're invested in more than just a car shop. This is your legacy for your kids. Imagine showing them that success can be built, and that dreams are worth chasing, Kevin pressed, each word forging a new resolve inside Mark, illuminating a possibility he had pushed away for too long. His heart raced as he realized the full weight of Kevin's message. It was time to abandon fear. He hung up, the silence filling the room with a new opportunity and invitation to redefine what success could mean for him. Are you okay? Sarah's soft question wrapped around him like a warm embrace, cutting through the tension of his lingering doubts. I think I can do this, Mark said, the words tasted foreign yet powerful on his tongue. The possibilities surged within him like a rising tide. He was at the edge of transformation, teetering over a cliff unmarked. I just need to take the leap. Sarah's smile was an affirmation of faith. Then let us outline some steps together. This is about your journey, and you'll never have to do it alone. Let us make a plan. In that instant, the air around him invigorated with a new blend of fear and determination. The urge to push back against the walls of limitation grew stronger, and Mark felt a pulse of energy igniting his spirit. Each plan they forged would be a commitment not just to the business, but to everything he envisioned for himself and his family. As they worked through the logistics, Mark stumbled upon several ideas he had kept buried: an innovative marketing strategy, improved customer engagement, community partnerships. They surged forth with newfound clarity. He hadn't just been a mechanic. He was a businessman brimming with potential he had yet to exploit. By the end of the evening, Mark could see the path before him, illuminated with purpose. In the midst of notes and sketches, he began to understand that this was only the beginning. He had to confront the doubts that had held him captive before. He needed to exorcise them definitively. Yet, as he contemplated the intensity of the commitment, an even deeper question loomed: could he stay true to himself while exceeding the limits he had once accepted? With a sudden rush, Mark stopped, realizing the balance of ambition and integrity would be his tightrope to walk. But the thought of what lay ahead, the success, the dreams, the chance to provide for his children beyond just survival, pulled him closer to the edge. He took a deep breath, feeling the shift beneath his feet. Change was both exhilarating and terrifying. The walls had begun to yield, and as he stared into the abyss of the unknown, Mark understood. The moment had arrived when he must embrace both his fear and his potential. What awaited him was yet to be seen, but one thing became glaringly clear: he was ready to fight for it all. Would he rise to the occasion, Or would he falter under the weight of his own ambitions? Tomorrow would begin a journey shaped by the path he chose to take. The sun peeked through the window, gently nudging Mark awake. A sense of urgency filled him as he recalled the previous night's revelations. Today was not just another day. It was the day he would begin to carve out his future, steps trembling yet resolute like a fawn finding its legs. He felt an unfamiliar resolve brewing within him, compelling him to act, to break the chains of complacency that had bound him for too long. After a quick breakfast, Mark dove into planning. He jotted down ideas, structuring a mission statement to define not only what he wanted for his garage but for his family, a legacy of tenacity, vision, and most importantly, love. Each word he penned felt like a brick laid in the foundation of his ambition. With every idea emerged a nagging thought: who did he think he was to aim so high? But just as quickly, he pushed back against it. You can't walk on eggshells anymore, Mark, he muttered to himself. You've got to confront those doubts like villains in your story. With the sketches of a marketing strategy spread out before him, handsome visuals and bold colors that sang with passion, he felt a thrill whisper through his veins. Deciding to start networking, Mark reached out to old acquaintances from his automotive days, those who might help bridge the gaps he had overlooked. Gathering his courage, he sent out emails, detailing his vision and inviting collaboration. It struck him then just how much he had shunned those connections, retreating into a space where he convinced himself there was no room for camaraderie. As he clicked send, Mark felt a strange satisfaction. Each missive was a lifeline extended back to the world from which he had distanced himself. Yet doubts still clawed at him. What if they dismissed him? What if his friends had forgotten him? The fear felt like a weight on his chest, but with it came a flicker of determination. He was ready to confront his long-standing fear of rejection. After an intense morning of strategizing, Mark decided to head to the shop for the first time since his conversation with Kevin. As he entered, the familiar scent of oil and metal wrapped around him. It felt like home, yet reflected a past he was unprepared to face. The clutter that usually overwhelmed him now inspired clarity. Each car waiting for repair was a canvas of possibility, just like his own life. Focus shifted as he adjusted the business plan. Could he rally a small team of talented mechanics and work together to elevate the service standard? As he brainstormed, a thought struck him. Restoring the shop could mean changing not just the cars they worked on, but also the lives of those who stepped through his doors. Could he cultivate a culture of growth? He felt the idea infuse him with energy. When his phone buzzed, jolting him out of his reverie. It was Kevin. He was curious about the timeline for Mark's plans. An elephant sat squarely in the room. Mark knew he had to showcase tangible progress. Balancing excitement with anxiety, the weight of impending expectations loomed over him. I just did some outreach and began drafting a few strategies, Mark found himself saying, voice slightly more confident than it had been. He could hear Kevin's approving nod through the line, spurring Mark onward. Kevin was supportive but firm. Now was not the time to hesitate. They spoke about the financials. Mark felt like a soldier preparing for battle, recalling the things he needed to fortify for this venture. Before the conversation wound down, Mark needed to voice his vulnerability. Sometimes I wonder if I'm cut out for this, Kevin, he admitted, the words tasting like failure. Doubt is a sign of growth, Mark. It challenges you. Just remember, it's not about immediate success, it's about commitment and progress. Every giant was once a beginner, Kevin reassured him, galvanizing his resolve. By the end of the call, Mark was buzzing, emboldened by the reminder that he was not alone in this undertaking. He set about implementing the strategies he had drafted, his heart pounding with each new initiative. But as night fell, Mark's mind turned inward, grappling with deeper fears that shadowed his ambition. Would he lose himself in this ambition? Would he fight against the confines of self-doubt and come out victorious? Or would he find himself sinking back into the abyss? Deep in thought, he gazed out the window at the dusky horizon. Change beckoned him, shimmering just beyond reach. Tomorrow would require a profound commitment, and a decision that could lead to liberating transformation or staggering self-deceit. As he pondered the agenda for the following day, One question remained: could his dreams unfold without wrestling with the ghosts of failure that had haunted him for so long? Mark shivered slightly as he locked the doors to the garage, heralding the end of a day filled with potential. Whatever was waiting for him outside, he knew it was time to step into the unknown and face the storm head-on. What awaited him on the journey would reshape not just his work but the very essence of who he believed he could become. The following morning, Mark's routine felt heavier, tinged with anticipation and a slight dread. As the sun streamed through the kitchen window, it illuminated the path he had chosen, a path fraught with both opportunity and uncertainty. The coffee brewed slowly, each drip sounding like a countdown to the moment that would encapsulate his next move. He studied his plans, revisiting the mission statement that had ignited his resolve. Words were powerful, he realized. They could construct empires or shatter illusions. This time, as he read, he envisioned not just the success of the garage but the kind of environment he wanted to foster, one that celebrated growth, mistakes, and resilience. But there was a critical juncture ahead. He needed to find mechanics to join him in this endeavor. He mentally mapped out the type of people he envisioned working with, those brimming with passion, creativity, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. Yet the age-old internal battle raged on. Could he lead a team? Would they respect him as their authority? Mark felt a surge of anxiety clawing at him. Determined to shake off the insecurities, Mark reached out to a local automotive school. They had connections with freshly minted technicians seeking opportunities. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating to compose the email. What if they viewed his garage as a stepping stone? What if they laughed at his desire to build something meaningful? He inhaled sharply, suppressing the doubts. "You're building to inspire, not to impress," he whispered as he began typing. Each keystroke pushed him closer to intent action, and he hit send with a mix of excitement and dread. Could this invitation manifest more than just a workforce? Could it cultivate a community? With one challenge tackled, he shifted his focus to the garage itself. Mark spent that day immersed in cleaning and organizing the space. The physical act mirrored the mental decluttering he desperately needed. As he swept the floor, he found a box filled with awards from years past, recognition he had let gather dust along with his aspirations. Pride swelled into his chest as he re-examined those accolades. It was easy to forget that he had once been lauded for his skills, essential to the industry. What had changed? Resentments? Fear? Wounds collected over time rose to the surface, and he confronted each of those memories deftly, resisting the urge to yield to complacency. In the midst of rejuvenating the shop, the door swung open and a familiar face stepped in. It was Ray, an old colleague and friend. A flood of emotions coursed through Mark: joy, trepidation, and vulnerability, all in equal measure. Ray's presence felt like an anchor amidst his internal storm. "Long time no see. What's this I hear about you making moves?" Ray grinned, his hands resting on his hips. The warmth of the encounter washed over Mark, but the unspoken fears lurked in the background. "I'm trying to make a comeback in the industry," Mark admitted, unsure of how much to reveal. "Sounds like you're going for it." "I'm proud of you, man." "It takes guts," Ray encouraged, but with an edge of skepticism in his tone. For a moment, Mark felt exposed. Was he even ready to be proud of himself yet? As they caught up, Mark found himself talking more than he intended, sharing fragments of his vision and strategies. Almost instinctively, he began to sense Ray's hesitance to fully support him. After all, they both knew the depths of the industry. "Look, Mark. I'll always back you, but it's a tough climate. You need a solid plan if you want to stand out. It's not just about passion." The weight of those words sank deep into Mark's spine. An unrecognized strategy. Was his vision merely a dream, or could it transcend the chaos of this fickle world? Mark wrestled with the newfound challenge of forging partnerships and facing the skepticism of those who once knew him as a successful figure. The thought of rejection twisted his stomach further. To put himself out there needed more than will. It required many small yet potent acts of bravery. As the sun sank lower, he felt the sharp edges of reality creeping back in, mixing with his aspirations. The momentum was positive, yet he was tethered by conscious doubts. He had taken steps forward, But what if they led him to another dead end? What awaited him would be more than building a shop, it would be crafting his identity anew. With Ray leaving and that pang of anxiety resurgent, Mark knew he was approaching a decisive crossroads. He could either retreat into old patterns or summon the courage to persist, confronting every piece of self-doubt along the way. Tomorrow, he decided, he would confront his hidden fears head-on, maybe even ask for an opportunity to work together with some fresh talent. But before that could happen, he braced himself for what the next conversation might demand of him. Was he truly prepared to risk vulnerability in pursuit of his aspirations? As night fell, uncertainty loomed like shadows waiting to be illuminated. The morning arrived with a crispness in the air, invigorating yet suffused with uncertainty. Mark woke up earlier than usual, his heart racing with the anticipation of the day ahead. Today wasn't just another day. It was a pivotal point in his journey, one where vulnerability and ambition would converge. As he sipped his coffee, he fought against the gnawing sensation of self-doubt worming its way into his mind. He walked into the garage, the silence hanging over him like a shroud. The space felt charged with potential, and yet every corner whispered reminders of past failures. He had chosen to confront this space, to infuse it with life and purpose, yet the pervasive weight of skepticism crept in at the edges. Mark had decided that confronting his fear of rejection was critical. He crafted a list of tasks for the day, determined to mark off each item with a sense of accomplishment. The first on that list: connect with potential mechanics and share his vision. He called the automotive school and arranged a session for the following week, a chance to directly interact with the promising technicians. As he hung up the phone, a mix of excitement and anxiety coursed through him. This was proactive, a shift from passive daydreaming to tangible action, yet the thought of standing before a group of fresh faces sent shivers down his spine. He would have to project confidence, even if he felt anything but. Feeling the need to bolster his resolve, he picked up the phone again. This time, he called a local business mentor who had once offered him advice during more prosperous days. As he dialed, the familiar ring echoed his rising insecurity. What if they don't take you seriously? The thought lingered. Each ring had a life of its own, filled with possibilities but haunted by the specter of judgment. "Hello, Mark. It's good to hear from you," the voice on the other end broke the cycle, warmth blooming through the phone line. Mark hesitated, but he pulled together his thoughts. The conversation flowed, and he found himself revealing the depths of his aspirations, the aspirations that had been gnawing at him for months. "Just remember, it's not just a dream, Mark. It's also about execution and resilience," the mentor's voice assured him. Each word resonated within him, instilling a sense of purpose. This wasn't a mere venture, it was an opportunity to build a legacy. As they spoke, Mark felt the knot in his stomach slowly unravel. He talked about the kind of environment he wanted to create, one that harkened back to the sense of community he had once relished. The ideas he had for collaboration, growth, and mentorship began to flourish in his mind. Ending the call, Mark was filled with clarity and newfound determination to be transparent about his journey. He needed to approach those potential mechanics not just as recruits but as partners in a shared vision. Taking ownership meant being honest about his past struggles, laying bare the lessons he had learned along the way. The day wore on, and the garage transformed before his eyes, each tweak and adjustment reflecting Mark's evolving mindset. He envisioned a whiteboard filled with ideas, names of potential team members, and a list of goals that could serve as a beacon. Late in the afternoon, as the shadows deepened and that familiar discomfort returned, he took a step back. The fear bubbled up again. What if his vision was flawed? What if he couldn't bring to life what had sparked his ambition? Mark sighed and faced the reflections of his past mistakes. Acknowledging those failures was part of the process, he realized. Each misstep was not a deterrent but a stepping stone. The mere act of standing in this garage, actively working to rehabilitate it, was a testament to his resilience. Without warning, the phone vibrated on the workbench, interrupting his thoughts. It was a message from Ray. "Hey man, I've been thinking. I might know someone who's looking to partner up with you. They've got experience and vision. Interested?" Mark's heart raced. Partnerships had been intimidating. Would he be ready to collaborate? Each possibility echoed in his mind, igniting both dread and excitement within him. As he considered Ray's offer, he realized that to thrive, he must embrace the unpredictability of change, to open doors even as uncertainty loomed. The road ahead wasn't clear, but perhaps that was where true potential resided. He drifted back to the whiteboard, feeling a flicker of inspiration. What could a partnership mean for his dream? A possibility to elevate his vision beyond his solitary ambitions, blending strengths and experiences. Would he dare to reach out for that chance? Mark stood in front of the board, the weight of the moment swelling within him. Perhaps this was what he needed, the next leap towards building not just a business, but a formidable support network. Could this collaboration mark the tipping point in his journey? With these questions swirling in his mind, he knew the next step demanded courage, and with that realization came new hope. Tomorrow would bring fresh conversations, unexpected alliances, and the thrilling uncertainty of what lay ahead. Yet as night enveloped the garage, and with it the shadows of his self-doubt, one question remained: was he prepared to seize the opportunity or let it slip away once more? Mark's sleep was fitful, the weight of possibilities trapping him within the confines of his thoughts. The faint light of dawn crept into the garage, illuminating the remnants of his dreams. The ideas that swirled in his mind last night still resonated but felt heavy with consequence. Today wasn't merely about moving forward, it was about dismantling the barriers that had pinned him down for too long. The first thing Mark did after pouring himself a cup of coffee was remove the phone from his pocket and reread Ray's message. They've got experience and vision. Experience and vision. He mulled over the words. What did he bring to this partnership that could be seen as equal? Did he have enough innovative ideas to share, enough tenacity to warrant being taken seriously alongside a seasoned professional? Doubts nagged him, a persistent chorus that questioned his worth. He leaned against the workbench, gazing at the whiteboard that had become a catalyst of hope. The names of potential mechanics stared back at him, an array of possibilities cloaked in anonymity. Mark took a deep breath and jotted down his thoughts on the board, trying to crystallize what he wanted from a potential partnership. What did he envision? Complementary skills? A shared passion for the craft? Or perhaps a mentor to guide his uncertain steps? The gravity of the decision loomed like an ominous cloud. Then, as if daring him to confront the whirlwind of emotions, the familiar ringtone pierced the silence, an incoming call from Ray. Blood rushed to his ears as he pressed the answer button. Hey, Mark! Did you think about what I said? Ray's voice resonated with an enthusiasm Mark hadn't anticipated. I'm telling you, this could be a game changer. Mark tried to suppress the tremor in his voice. Yeah, I was thinking, but I need to know more about this person. What's their background? Let's just say they have a knack for turning visions into realities. They've built a few successful businesses from the ground up. It's not just about mechanics for them, they understand people too. I think you two could really vibe. The prospect of such experience thrilled Mark and terrified him. Could he actually bring someone with such expertise into his often chaotic, struggling world? Would he have what it took to meet their expectations without buckling under the strain? Look, Ray continued, sensing Mark's hesitation. You've got raw talent, a heart for this business. Just think of how much they could help you elevate what you're trying to achieve. As Mark mulled over this, a burning question crept into his mind. What if this was the moment that propelled him forward or sent him tumbling back into mediocrity? He realized it was a moral dilemma of sorts. How willing was he to put himself in a position of vulnerability, particularly with someone who had a track record of success? Mark took a moment to gather his thoughts, but Ray's continued enthusiasm urged him to take action. I'll set up a meeting for us. Just be yourself, you have the vision, and they'll see that. Trust me. After hanging up, Mark felt a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. Ray believed in him. Was that belief enough to bridge the gap between self-doubt and strong conviction? The rest of the day consisted of preparation marked by frenetic energy. He scrambled to organize the garage, filling it with clean surfaces and organized tools, projecting the very image of professionalism he hoped to embody in front of this potential partner. Every item he rearranged symbolized his determination to reshape not just the garage but also the trajectory of his personal journey. As afternoon turned into evening, thoughts of the meeting scheduled for the next day flooded him, questions, scenarios, potential pitfalls. Could he truly articulate his passion amid the flashing specters of past failures? Would he falter before this experienced individual? The thought of being judged loomed large, fueling a burgeoning flame of resolve. He couldn't let fear dismantle the dreams he had painstakingly built. Standing before the whiteboard, an idea struck him. What if he reframed the way he presented his struggles? Instead of merely speaking about past failures, he could share the transformative lessons learned. The very essence of who he was now, forged through hardship, could resonate with this new partner. It was a moment of clarity, like flicking a switch. He had the power to own his narrative. But as he felt a surge of empowerment course through him, he also sensed an undeniable pressure to perform. With nightfall thickening around him, Mark faced the dim reflection in the window, a man on the brink of change, poised between uncertainty and potential. Yet within that mirrored hesitation lay a crucial truth: he was ready to confront whatever lay ahead. What awaited him in that meeting? Would he grasp the opportunity and propel his vision into reality? Or would he retreat into the shadows of self-doubt once again? He exhaled deeply, like a fighter preparing for a bout, ready to seize the day with both determination and a glimmer of hope. Tomorrow could shape everything. The morning felt electric, a swath of possibility stretching ahead of Mark as he stood in front of the mirror. He adjusted his collar nervously, the reflection staring back at him holding more than just the image of a garage owner. It reflected a man on the verge of transformation. Today's meeting could rewrite his narrative, lifting him from the weight of his past failures into the sunlight of opportunity. As he drove to the coffee shop where he was supposed to meet Ray and the potential partner, looping thoughts swirled. Could he truly convey the passion that burned inside him? He rehearsed phrases in his head, convinced that articulating his vision was essential to making an impression. Each thought carried with it a tinge of anxiety, but he pushed through, reminding himself that he had the right to take center stage in his own story. The coffee shop was buzzing as he walked in. The hustle and bustle felt overwhelming initially, but he regained focus as he spotted Ray sitting at a corner table, animatedly chatting with an elegant woman beside him. She carried an aura of authority, her presence framed by polished confidence. Mark's stomach nodded. "Hey, you made it!" Ray called out, breaking into a grin as Mark approached. "This is Julia. She's the one I told you about." "Nice to meet you, Mark," Julia said, extending her hand, her grip firm. "Ray has spoken highly of you." Mark forced a smile, a mix of apprehension and eagerness surging through him. "Thanks. I appreciate the chance to chat." They settled into the conversation, and Mark sensed the expectation hovering in the air. After pleasantries, Ray nudged him toward the uncomfortable. "So, tell Julia about your vision for the garage." Mark's heart raced. The room's warmth suddenly felt constricting. He had wanted to ease into this but now felt like the spotlight was thrust upon him. He cleared his throat, recalling his earlier clarity about framing his past not as a burden, but as a teacher. "I've been working in this garage for years, and I realized it isn't just about fixing cars. It's about building relationships, offering people trust and genuine care. I see a future where this garage becomes a community hub where customers feel valued, and not just like another ticket in the queue." Julia listened intently, her expression inscrutable. As he continued, he felt the weight of fragility lifting, replaced by a dawning realization of his own capacity. "I've learned from my mistakes. Each setback taught me resilience. I want to turn that energy into something positive for the garage and the people I work with." After he finished, silence ensued, making his heart thud like a drum. Did he meet her expectations? "I appreciate your honesty, Mark," Julia finally said, her tone measured. "It's refreshing to meet someone who understands the importance of connection in a business. What specifically do you need to make this happen?" Her question pierced through every lingering doubt he had. A roadmap was forming, reflected in his mind's eye. I need mentorship and a strategic partner to help navigate the business landscape. Someone who believes in the vision as much as I do. Ray's encouraging nod bolstered his confidence. When he looked at Julia, he saw a flicker of intrigue in her eyes, a spark that hinted she might see something in him worth nurturing. Good, she replied, leaning in slightly. But let me challenge you. How do you plan to cultivate that community? Not just with customers, but how will you engage your team? The air thickened. Mark felt the sudden weight of a sharp question, instant revelations about his own shortcomings bubbling to the surface. He hadn't pinpointed that yet. As he opened his mouth, words escaped him. His mind raced. How could he create a culture when he had barely mastered his own self-doubt? This meeting had turned into an unanticipated test, not just of his ideas, but of his competencies. Building a supportive environment starts from within, he finally said, piecing together his thoughts. I need to focus on creating a team that is not only skilled but also passionate. I want to bring in mechanics who share the same values and inspire one another, fostering an atmosphere of growth. Julia nodded approvingly, but as their discussion progressed, so did the feeling that he was not adequately prepared to answer the unspoken challenge she represented. Self-doubt loomed in the background, like a tempestuous storm waiting to engulf him if he faltered. They continued discussing strategies, each exchange painting the broader picture of his aspirations. Mark realized through the conversation that the pursuit of transformation required more than just his vision. It necessitated accountability and risked the willingness to offer a piece of himself to this burgeoning partnership. As they wrapped up, Julia offered an encouraging summary, but beneath her praise was a probing question. Mark, now that you've exposed your vision, what will you do if things don't go as planned? Have you thought about that? The question hit hard, settling deep in his gut. Could he stomach the thought of facing failure again? What if his dreams proved to be as fragile as last night's inspiration? The moment of truth was upon him, and the fire ignited once again within. His response would shape everything. Failure perhaps isn't the end. It could mean the beginning of something greater. A lesson I continue to learn. The dialogue shifted from hopeful aspiration to the heart of his struggle. What would he be willing to risk in the pursuit of his dreams? The stakes were rising, and the next days would challenge not only his vision but the very essence of his resilience. The path ahead had never felt so daunting, and yet, in this storm lay the seed of potential growth. He left that meeting knowing he stood at a crossroads, one that demanded not just courage, but an awakening to his deeper truths. But as he stepped out into the bright sunlight, the question loomed larger than ever. Was he truly ready to embrace the storm? The next morning, a pervasive unease clung to Mark as he arrived at the garage. The scent of grease and rubber, usually a comforting presence, now felt like a shroud around his growing doubts. He glanced around, noting the familiar tools strewn about, and the mechanics engaged in their usual rhythm. It struck him that despite his aspirations, he was about to plunge into uncharted territory, not just in the business landscape, but within himself. Ray's voice broke through his reverie, energetic and insistent. We need to dive deeper into that vision, Mark. What are the actionable steps? Let us start with a team meeting. We need buy-in from everyone. A sudden chill gripped Mark. Evoking a collective spirit felt daunting when he hardly felt settled in his own. Sure, I can talk to them, but what if they don't believe in this vision like I do? Ray clapped a hand on his shoulder. You need to be confident. Your belief can be contagious. But Mark could feel the dissonance internalized within him. What if that confidence faltered? The words caught in his throat. He gathered the team around for the meeting, trying to mask his apprehension with enthusiasm. As he stood before them, faces turned expectant, the weight of leadership settled heavily on his shoulders. Thanks for coming, everyone. I wanted to share some ideas I'm developing for the garage moving forward. He paused, swallowing hard. I believe we can create a place where not just our customers, but all of us feel connected and valued. The silence hung thick in the air. The skeptical glance exchanged between two of his colleagues felt like ice water trickling down his spine. What do you think? He asked, forcing more confidence into his voice than he felt. I think we're just fixing cars here, Mark. That's what we do, one mechanic replied, the wisdom of years of experience stark against Mark's fervent vision. A wave of embarrassment crashed over him, each comment chipping away at the hope he had just begun to cultivate. We can do more than that, he insisted, his voice trembling. We can provide an experience, a sense of belonging. Imagine customers leaving not only satisfied but feeling part of something bigger. He locked eyes with Ray, who nodded, urging him to continue. I want us to stand out, not just in service but in spirit. But I need your support to create that dynamic. We have to be a team that works together, inspires each other, and is committed to growth. The room was still, but he could see faint flickers of curiosity now surfacing in their expressions. Growth? Said another mechanic tentatively. What does that even look like? Mark could suddenly feel the heart of the matter ripple through him. He needed to show them that growth wasn't just an abstract concept, it was a tangible, lived experience. It looks like us learning from each other, teaching each other new skills, collaborating on projects where we all feel invested. Like what? A workshop or something? Another chimed in, skepticism still thick in his voice. Exactly. Mark didn't hesitate. We host workshops to share knowledge, whether it's mechanical skills or business principles. We create a mentorship program within the team, everyone gets a chance to shine. As they began to respond with murmurs of interest, a part of him blossomed, still cautious but growing. Perhaps this wasn't the daunting leap he perceived. Perhaps it was the challenge and invitation to ignite an internal revolution, to spur those around him to elevate their skills and dreams alongside his own. Yet beneath the optimism, shadows of doubt lingered. Would they truly commit to this journey? Would he be able to secure their belief? The question lingered uncomfortably. Walking back to his office later that day, tired yet invigorated, Mark reflected. The encouragement from his team had flickered to life like embers in a fire, but there remained the underlying fear: what if he failed to nurture that spark? What if he didn't have the strength to keep them engaged as they navigated toward this new direction? That evening he settled down with his notes, determined to solidify a plan that didn't just speak but resonated. He began to sketch ideas for workshops, team-building exercises, and methods of accountability. But every stroke of the pen was punctuated by an ever-looming question: was he truly prepared to lead, to expose himself to potential failure again? Emerging from his notes, Mark knew the time for action was drawing near, and he could hear the echoes of Julia's challenge ringing in his ears. What would he do if things fell apart? The crossroads had transformed into a perilous path, promising growth, yet riddled with uncertainty. As he shut off the light, a sense of resolve formed within him. He would dig deep into that inner strength. But despite this reassurance, a thought lingered: was he ready to face the consequences of his ambitions? The next day would demand not just a plan but a confrontation with his own limitations and the weight of expectations within the team. Would his passion translate to action? It was time to find out. The sound of metal clanging against metal reverberated through the garage, a fitting backdrop to Mark's newfound fervor. Today marked the beginning of his transformation, and he felt invigorated. Having spent the previous night drafting actionable steps for his team, the thrill of anticipation coursed through him. Each task felt like a milestone in a marathon he had yet to run, but this time, he felt ready. As sunlight poured in through the large windows, illuminating the grime-coated walls and rusty tools, Mark knew he was not just battling external perceptions but internal doubts as well. He had learned that leadership was not merely the act of directing, but rather an exercise in vulnerability. The winds of conviction danced within him, invigorating each breath. Gathering his team for their first workshop session, adrenaline surged as he stepped into the center of the room. Today is about collaboration, he opened, trying to channel the confident aura Julia had embodied. We're not just mechanics. We're a community, and we're going to build something extraordinary together. The initial hushed gathering transformed as Mark's words ignited sparks of enthusiasm around the room. They not only listened but actively engaged, sharing their ideas and the skills that were unique to them. Mark could hear the clatter of tools as they grouped into pairs, excitedly discussing their visions of collaborative projects. For the first time, he felt the weight begin to lessen. They weren't just fixing engines, they were engineering the future of the shop. Let us establish a mentorship program, he suggested, flipping the dynamic script. With memories of his own struggles navigating the mechanical world, he emphasized how learning was essential to growth. Everyone has something valuable to teach and learn, he declared, eyes scanning faces that had once been enveloped in skepticism. Who here feels they can mentor someone on advanced diagnostics? Hands began to rise, each embraced with a whisper of acknowledgement. As the session wrapped up, an electrifying energy filled the air, a far cry from the quiet resignation of the past. He noticed his team members chatting excitedly amongst themselves, exchanging knowledge, and collaborating eagerly. Satisfaction flooded Mark's chest. They were no longer simply workers. They were becoming champions of a shared vision. In the days that followed, the pattern not only continued but escalated. Attendance at the workshops surged. The garage transformed into a thriving hub of innovation. Mechanics began applying newly learned techniques, truly pushing each other to excel. Mark felt the momentum intensify, as if the very spirit of the place had been revitalized. One evening, as Mark prepared to close up the garage, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Ray, and the pride in his eyes spoke volumes. "Man, I've been watching this place grow," Ray exclaimed, mingling with happiness. "The atmosphere is incredible. You've really done it, Mark. You're leading." Mark felt a swell of pride, but also uncertainty. "It's them, Ray. They've embraced this community concept. I just opened the door." "That might be true, but it takes courage to stand in front of them and let them lead too. You built that trust, my friend." That recognition hit home. It signified not only external validation but a deep internal understanding of his journey from the aspiring entrepreneur to the empowering leader. He was gaining confidence not just as a mechanic but as an innovator in his industry. He had found his authentic voice amidst the noise of self-doubt and insecurity. Weeks passed, and Mark felt the external transformation reflected internally. He had broadened the vision for his garage, attracting new clients through word of mouth and creating a culture centered on empowerment and engagement. The once struggling shop was now not just a business, but a model of what passion combined with integrity could create. Days before the quarterly review with Kevin, the investor, Mark stood with his team in front of a whiteboard filled with plans, progress metrics, and future strategies. They clapped each other on the back in celebration of their accomplishments, no longer hesitant individuals but a cohesive unit. Mark knew this was his success song, not one of whispers and reluctance, but of shouts and shared victories. Kevin arrived for the meeting, and as they sat down, Mark felt a surge of pride. "I want to show you what we've built here," he said, diving into a presentation of their newfound structure, supported by data of increased customer satisfaction and revenue growth. "We're not just fixing cars, we're changing lives, including our own." Kevin's interest peaked, the respect evident in his nodding head. "Mark, this is impressive. You have something special here, a community. Let us talk about the next level of investment to expand on this model." As the conversation unfolded, Mark knew this was a marker of true achievement. Not just the financial future, but the possibility to elevate what he had begun. He had proven his worth, not just to others but to himself, triumphantly emerging from the shadows of self-doubt. Months later, as he surveyed the garage bustling with more employees and customers than he could have ever imagined, Mark smiled, recognizing the journey he had undertaken. Each challenge faced had been a stepping stone, leading to this well-deserved fulfillment. He had transformed not just his garage but his life, carving out an identity steeped in resilience and growth. This was his moment of reconnection, not only with his ambitions but his very essence. He had arrived at a place where ambition met authenticity, and he stood firmly in his skin, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. If you want to witness more stories of personal transformation and courage, you need to subscribe now to the channel. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support more inspiring content. Comment below your reactions and theories about this evolution. Let's spark a conversation. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of change and determination. Your support can make a difference.